Oh. Oh. Welcome to Meaningful Mornings. In 2021, from January 11th to January 27th, we navigated the Mahabharata. From January 28th to April 5th, we navigated Bhagavad Gita's chapter 1, 47 verses. From April 6th to July 23, July 23rd was Guru Purnima, we navigated chapter 2, 72 verses. And from July 26th to October 13th, we will have navigated chapter 3, which is 43 verses. We have gone through a lot together. Typically, when one says that, it tends to be in the negative. We've gone through illness and arguments. But in our case, we've gone through a lot together in the positive. Learning to be cheerful, learning to be joyful. This Navaratri, this Vijayadashmi has been most meaningful to me. There are endless directions of completion that is manifesting, including magically chapter 3, which is the most universal chapter. It is the most practical chapter. We are bhagya to have experienced this the way we did. During Navaratri, really, many celebrations relating to Sanatana Dharma, what seekers engage in is parayana. Can you share in the chat what parayana means? Parayana means to read, to repeat. Yes? We do this with Ramayana. We do this with Gita. That is a lesser meaning of parayana. The fuller meaning is para, which means highest, and ayana means path. This is not about reading. This is about reconciling. This is the highest. This is where I am. I have to follow the path to the highest. How is this possible? Through Nishta Shrotriya, which means to have a guide who's Nishta. That means they're more evolved than we are. In our case, that being Sri Krishna, the most evolved. And Shrotriya. He is able to communicate to us about the path, how to follow the path. Feel that we are being guided by the highest to the highest. Parayana. And what Sri Krishna is offering to us is Ritam and Satyam. Ritam means an analysis of the highest. What are we supposed to do? Listen. I'm not saying hear. Right now I can hear the birds. I can hear a train. Listen. And what should evolve from ritam is satyam, which means to live what you listen to. You can't just listen. You have to live. After inspiration, what comes? Application. What has Sri Krishna's analysis of the truth been? Dedicate. Dedicate yourself first to a person, because it's most relatable. For those who are most egotistical, dedicate yourself to your family. But keep growing from family to community to society to humanity. These higher ranges are not a person, but it's a purpose. One who's dedicated to society, to humanity, they don't know those people, correct? In your community, you know everyone. In your society, tell me, do you know everyone? So it evolves from a person to a purpose. But the highest dedication is to presence. The word in the last verse was saha, to presence. That is being dedicated to divinity. In sports culture, there's a saying, the best defense is a strong offense. You've all heard that before. Being dedicated to not me is the best defense against the ego. Clear? And now, reiterating what was shared in verse 42. Shri Krishna has shared with us what dhyana or disidentification is. I have to disidentify or forget the organs of output. How? By identifying, by remembering the organs of input. Everyone's understood that connection. But you keep going. Organs of input to mind. Mind to intellect. Intellect to ego. That will be shared now. To observe the ego. That the ego is always trying to find completion. How? Through the equipments to create experiences. When I observe this, I come to understand and appreciate how false this is. That I will lose. I use the word, we will always fail through such a strategy. And finally, to identify with the spirit. To remember the spirit. And my last thought for all of you was to be vigilant. When someone keeps vigil, you can all see this, it's dark outside, but they're close to that light. Seen this in movies, etc. Just like our cars. Now every new car has to have, at least in North America, daytime running lights, correct? That you may be drowsy, but that car will not be. We do the same with our home. Maybe not our home, but Chinmayadhara, our ashram, we have emergency lights on. When do they turn off? Never. They're emergency lights. They're always keeping vigil for pathways so people can exit for whatever reason. In our recent women's empowerment workshop, I gave everyone a 1, 2, 3, 4 step plan on how to be more accepting. Step 4 was every month, donate 4% of your gross income. Every month, donate 4% of your gross income. This is called Deyam Dina Janaya Chavittam. Now, some may be thinking, here you go again, about soliciting donations. See if you're feeling that. You've not reflected on this enough. The implication of this is the more you give, the less you identify with materials. The less you identify with materials, the more bandwidth you have to focus on awareness. We're lost in being aware of instead of being found in awareness. This is how we apply. If you don't do this, this will not be Navaratri, this will be Nityaratri, which means we will always live in darkness. And now the completing verse of chapter 3, verse 43. Evam buddhe param buddhva samstabhyatmanam atmana jahi shatrum mahabaho kamarupam durasadam. First quarter. Buddhehe param. What is superior to the intellect? Evam buddhva, knowing this. What is superior to the intellect? It is the ego, but what's implied here is the spirit. The word saha from the last verse is being elaborated upon now. And you all recognize the word buddhva. It sounds like Buddha. That's where the word Buddha has come from. Buddhva. One who knows. And I shared this with you just to show you the origins of Prince Siddhartha, Gautama Buddha. That's all rooted in Sanatana Dharma. You're all clear about that? I'm showing you that word right now. One subtle point here, which I only need you to reflect on. One cannot know the spirit, God, etc., randomly. If you go about living your life in whatever way, you will never know the spirit or God. Just think, if you sat down and contemplated, what would you contemplate on if you've never been taught about the spirit/God? See, what we know in life is due to pratyaksha, which means experience, and anumana, which means inference. That's all our sources of knowledge are. But to know that which is subjective, we also need what is known as Veda Pramana. We need to be guided beyond ourselves. Understood? I cannot know this depending on myself. I have to depend on a higher source. And that's emphasized in the second quarter. Samstabhya, your book says restraining. I've been using the word directing. Direct what? Atmana. By what? Atmana. The same word has come up, no? Vivek should direct Vivek. What does that mean? Atmanam here, that's the first reference, is referring to the ego. The ego should be directed. Directed to what? The second Atma is the spirit. Again, the importance of a guide, correct? And here I'm not emphasizing myself. I was guided in all of this. If I read this independently, and I'd have no idea what is happening. If you think of a fight or a war, those who are on higher grounds, they tend to direct those who are on lower grounds, correct? They're in control. That's the implication here. You are more than the ego. So direct that ego to that more. Jahi Shatrum Mahabaho. Shri Krishna continuously describes you as Mahabaho. Can you show me your Mahabaho? I love the scenes of flexing. I wish I could take a screenshot right now. You're already externally Mahabaho. Every one of you. Your hair is combed. You've made breakfast. You have a bank account. Prince Arjuna is that times 1,000. The Mahabaho he's referring to is not external. It is internal. Why? Because where does this Shatru or enemy live? Not outside, but inside. Jahi. Earlier the word was prajahi, which means deal with this, destroy this. That requires us being ever vigilant, because where does this enemy live? With us, in every experience. Typically, in a war, there's some downtime, correct? There's a ceasefire, it's nighttime. Does that happen with dislikes, likes, anger, desire? I keep sharing about vigilance. Here's a practical framework on being more vigilant. Simplify and prioritize. Simplify, in our Upanishad course, I described as Vairagya. Prioritize, in our Upanishad course, I described as Viveka. Simplify everything about what you have and who you are, so you have enough energy, enthusiasm, empathy to bypass that ego. It requires every ounce of you, or the ego will push you out again to extroversion. Shri Krishna makes sure we're clear about this. What is the form of this Shatru? The Rupam, or form, is Kama, desire. He chooses the word desire because there's so much from which desire has come, and there's so much that the desire creates. So he's chosen this middle vice. Durasadam. Duhu means difficult. Asadam means to attack or fight. This is not a passive or a casual affair. This demands you to be active with listening, reflecting, now contemplating. This is such a poetic text. Prince Arjuna is fighting against Duryodhana. Duryodhana means the one who's difficult to fight. The same word is being used here, Durasadam. And in the case of Ramayana, what does Ravana symbolize? Kama. And when Sri Rama defeats him, that becomes Vijaya. Awesome. From inspiration to application, we have an ongoing application. You have 4 more days. 13, 14, 15, 16. You can give up on the 17th. Or leading up to the 17th, 100 more hours to engage in your application. Shanti, shanti, shanti. Be safe, be sound, be serene, be happiness.